All right, we will call the meeting to order. This is the regularly scheduled BET meeting for Tuesday, January 7th, first meeting of the new calendar year. Welcome, everybody. Looks like all offices are represented. Notice the meeting was properly posted on January 6th, 2025. Item number 1, discussion possible action regarding the minutes of December 12th. Motion to approve. Second. We got a motion. Yeah, that's cool. We got a motion and a second to approve the minute December the 12th. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 2, discussion possible action regarding any items currently on the BET watch list. Anybody have anything you want to discuss? Okay, seeing no action on item 2 as of yet, we will move on to item number 3. Discussion possible action regarding an update on employee benefits. Employee benefits. Mr. Wilkerson.
Let her pull that up real quick. So overall, we're doing well. This report compares last fiscal year through this fiscal year through claims were paid on Monday's BOCC agenda. So it's really recent. Overall, medical compared to last fiscal year were $988,000 under, or 11% under where we were at last fiscal year at this point. If you look down at prescriptions, we're $346,000 under, or 5%. So if you combine those, overall we're 9% under, or $1.3 million compared to last fiscal year. The refunds or the reimbursements kind of skew the pot a little bit. If you look at reimbursements, we received less reimbursements, but overall, if you factor in reimbursements, we're 6% under, or $778,000 where we were last fiscal year. And really, we had a one-time refund last fiscal year. It's not a normal refund; it's on a large claim that kind of skewed that refund total. And then on the COVID claims, if you look at those. Last fiscal year at this point, we were at $366,000. This fiscal year, I haven't filed any yet. I'm just letting them build up because we're about $70,000 in COVID claims. So I was letting that build up a little bit before I file for reimbursement.
So it looks like on the expenditure side, we're doing really good. What about, have you been tracking revenue
A little
this
bit.
year versus last year? How are we looking on the
We're looking
revenue
good.
side? Still in line with what we were projecting. Good deal.
There you go, Mark. That's the money you were looking for. He's got a pot full of it.
Wait till next month. Things change fast.
So with your COVID, we're really at about 850.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Did I remember right that the second half of the year tends to be more expensive than the first half, or is it the other way around?
Not necessarily. It just all the averaged out. Last year, we ran out of rural funding, but the budget needed to be adjusted. So we're pretty on track right now. Because if you look at our overall average last year, we were at $366,000 on medical claims per week. This year we're tracking $335,000 per week.
It does usually seem to me that
It goes up a little bit, yeah.
it goes up the second half of the year. But to John's point, even at that, which is I think why he's doing the weekly tracking numbers on there, so we can kind of compare those. So we're still in a good position relative to last year. But
Correct. And if you look back at 22-23 on the medical average, it's that last column under medical on the right. Our average for that fiscal year was $400,000 per week. So even last fiscal year, we ran under that, running under that further.
And then you release some of the, I'm sorry, you release some of the CARES funding or the COVID relief funding. Do I understand that right? That just money we couldn't use.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really have any effect on this.
It doesn't have any effect on it.
You see any big claims or big items that are coming up? Or things that
We had a large check register come through that's going to come on the 15th of this month, about $690,000 check register. It's larger than normal, had some large claims. If we bounced it up against the same week last fiscal year, we had a $450,000 register. So still gives us some wiggle room.
Okay. Any other questions?
Have there been any issues with you getting the budgeted revenue for benefits with the change that we made this fiscal year?
It seems like it's going through fine. I do need to meet with finance and go over a few things on that, but it seems like it's working well. It's just timing wise. Sometimes to get money into the pot, it takes, we have to put it to the budget board, and then part of the appropriations, then the check has to get cut. We have to wait 2 weeks or a week for a BOCC meeting for the funds to be deposited. So sometimes there's kind of a delay in getting that, but that's just our procedures.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. You and your team doing really good work, saving the county money. Appreciate it. All right. Item 4. Actually, John did pass out this document. Without objection, the chair will ask the clerk to make this document part of the record. Item 4, discussion and possible action for election of chairman and vice chairman for calendar year 2025.
I'd move to keep the same officers.
I would second that. Is that possible?
Anything's possible if you believe it.
If you can do it.
Well, what was your suggestion before, given that you're now with the sheriff?
I don't have a suggestion. I'm not having a suggestion. But,
Not be
He's
an
not
actor.
representing the sheriff, he's representing District 1. And until I make a change, he'll represent District 1.
now that does,
forward.
yeah. I would anticipate that I would not be representing District 1 entire calendar year. Is that-
We don't know what's gonna happen next week.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so,
If there is a change in that, are you still comfortable acting as chairman with not a voting right behind it if that move were to come for you? Are you still okay with setting that as a chairman in your new role?
Yes.
yeah, I think that would be different though than just continuing the way it was. But yes, if that's something that this board would be interested in, I would be happy to accommodate. Now, that's just me personally. I'm not speaking for District 1. I've not talked to Joe about how I would vote on that. I'm just saying that I would be open to the idea.
I know Christie's not here.
And she can't object.
So we'll be okay with vice.
She would still be okay with that as well. Seconded your motion, so talking more about that.
Okay, so what's your motion contemplating?
We keep the same officers. You as chairman, Christie as vice chairman.
And would we just, if and when the circumstance changes and District 1 has,
We'll deal with that when we get there.
well, I mean, that's going to be tougher for me.
What?
I mean, I guess we can revisit this at the next meeting. I mean, I've talked to Joe on most of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is stuff that we've had before us in the past, so I know where we are. I don't want to get into a situation to where I'm still we can have a conversation later. I would be more comfortable in what you had mentioned, just, not voting and whatnot, moving forward as chair, if and when District 1 has a replacement sitting here. Because there's going to be instances where, the sheriff's office and District 1 are going to be, on different pages. And Brandon and I have been on different pages on stuff, and I really don't want to be in the middle there. You know what I'm saying? So, there's no issues right now. I mean, I've talked to both of them, and everything's cool right now, but that'll need to be a consideration moving forward, if that makes sense.
What I've observed since I've been here, I don't have any concerns about it. I mean, there may be internal concerns, but in terms of just one of the members of BET, I don't have any reservation about having you continue in this position. When circumstances change, warrant another vote on chairman and vice chairman, we can deal with that when the time comes, in my opinion. But the value of having you continue to chair this with your institutional knowledge is,
Well, I think maybe I might be putting words in his mouth, but what I feel like he's saying in that particular case, yeah, there's certainly times where he's gone in front of the budget board and pushed the group's will, even if it was against his idea personally. But I think what I'm hearing in this particular case, though, would be if there's an item that maybe District 1 currently wants voted a certain way versus the sheriff wants an item voted a certain way, it puts him in a quandary. While he's still a voting member.
but he's in the quandary whether he remains the chairman or not. I mean, his vote is separate from being chairman, the way I see it. I mean, you already have the situation where you work for the sheriff, but you're representing D1 with your vote today, and next month, and the next month. That's different than serving as chairman and being here with the institutional knowledge that you have about the county's budget, which I think is important that we have going forward, as long as we can have it.
Have any thoughts?
Not sure your item allows you to contemplate. 30% since you still are on the additional points class. But if you contemplate another structure, maybe get budget board to weigh in on that ultimately prior to making that decision. But
Well,
that's just me.
and I have not had a chance to look at the most recent DET venture resolution establishing it and what exactly the rules say, but again, we don't have to know all that today.
But yeah,
My opinion.
for today, it's not an issue. I know the items that are on the agenda, and I'm comfortable with this. If we would roll back to last BET, and we had that same stuff, for instance, the team item, and the sheriff's office had one opinion, and District 1 had a different opinion. We voted a different way. Those are the types of situations that I don't want to put myself in, because then I would want to, if Joe wants me to represent District 1, but I'm also always representing the sheriff's office as an employee of the sheriff's office. I don't want that confliction, right? That doesn't matter for this agenda. It's not going to play in, but moving forward, it could at some point. So,
But again, I don't think it's relevant in your role as chairman. I think what you're talking about is a different question about how you vote as a member of DET, which is separate from your role as chairman.
correct.
So, I mean, I don't know about that question. I think that is an issue that you have to consider, but in terms of my motion to have you continue as chairman and to serve as chairman and lead the meetings, I don't think it matters really where you are, as long as you're available to do that. That's what I would prefer.
All right, so based on that motion, though, we will have to come back and address this again. There's no other.
Well, I guess, I mean, unless he goes back to work for D1, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But for the next few months, it sounds like this is a good solution. And if he can't continue doing it at some point, then we figure out what other sucker gets to do it. I don't know, but I want to keep the same sucker we got today doing it for the next few months.
What a sales job.
So,
He's a closer, that JC
He knows the ABCs.
yeah.
Always be closing.
Well, it'd be our desire that you stay here if you're in some capacity, at least for your knowledge and education behind what we do. And I think it's a very valuable piece.
Okay. Well, like I said, for today and everything, I think everything's fine. We can have some more discussions for future. We won't have another scheduled BET meeting until a month from now. Now, who knows, it could be specials, but so we got some time to contemplate moving forward. Okay, we've got a motion and a second to leave the chairman and vice chairman as it currently sits, which would be me as chair and Christy from the treasurer's office as vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain. I did not talk to Joe specifically about this. Okay, item 5, discussions, discuss, study, and make possible recommendations to budget board regarding the county's plan to build a new jail. Anything on this?
Other than we keep talking about it, we have the AG opinion. Like, still, and clearly the loss is how anybody tends to pay for it. I've started looking at, I think one of the budget board members, Mr. Warren, brought up his reservations about putting money into a new jail fund when we don't know what the plan is. And somebody said, well, we do have a plan, here are the structural plans, but it's not worth the paper it's written on. You can't pay for the thing. So I've started looking back at old architectural plans to expand the current facility. I mean, I don't get a sense that there's the kind of movement that we need to see anywhere about how this is any more than a pipe dream at this point. I don't think just putting something on the ballot to create a sales tax, or I don't think you get a property tax increase, but the sales tax, I just don't see what the voters will see that would nudge them in the direction of a yes vote with the way we currently operate the facility and the jail.
Can you remind me what the original intent of this item was? Because it's been on a few times, and I don't want to just blow it off without actually looking into, since it was requested by the budget board. Was the intent for us to find those things, to take it from pipe dream to where there is enough money? I mean, what was the intent of the item when it was requested that it come down here? Does anybody know?
I have to watch the video again, but
4 months ago.
but to me, it came out of that meeting that I'm thinking of, where discussion about putting ARP interest and maybe some other sources of funds into the new jail fund. Then there was a question about what's the plan, where do you get the revenue to build it? And I think the way I understood it, and it may be wrong, but is that
I think
we can sit around and talk about it, study it, and think through options and tease out some ideas and some suggestions. But I think it's kind of one of those things. I think everybody's supposed to be doing it, but and probably some people are working on it, but I don't hear anything.
Well, that was just my concern. I don't want to kick this can down the road if we do have some real homework that we're supposed to be doing, but I'm just unclear of what that is. I don't want to.
It's my understanding it was just this board overviews budgets and numbers. We might be able to identify any unused monies that would go for that purpose. That's my understanding.
So what was the timeline as far as putting a recommendation back to the budget? Was there not one? I mean, because we're obviously under
Well, that's the other
Some sort
concern
of
too.
timeline.
I know that Christie's not here, but at one point, we bonded that money. We sold some of those bonds, and at some point, we have to initialize the use of that money. It has to be turned back.
Well, you've got 3 years to reasonably expend 85% of the funds that have been drawn out, not the full amount, just what's been drawn out. My understanding, Joe, this may have changed, but I think the money that has been drawn out of that thus far, I think we are going to be fine meeting that 85% of that number. I don't think there's going to be an issue there. I mean, it is a reasonable expectation of expenditure of 85% of the funds. We had a good portion of that already out the door, and then I think there was more that was going to be associated with some of the architectural stuff. So I think that first drawdown is,
That will make that threshold.
I mean, so again, I don't necessarily want to hang up on it, but I also, I do want to look at it if, again, if we've been tasked with that, but I'm also unclear where to start on that, so.
well, this is a little bit beyond what this group has done in the past. So what I would recommend is that we all visit with our elected official or the elected official that we represent and figure out what their goal and idea is with this particular item. To get to Brandon's point, we need to kind of figure out what that is, and then from there we need to figure out if that's something that is something that we need to be looking at here, or is it something that maybe policy and governance at the VOCC side would be looking at, and then those of us that aren't in the commissioner's office could attend those P&G meetings and, offer suggestions and whatnot, because whether it's a sales tax or what, I mean, those are things that are within the Board of County Commissioners purview. And
Was it, so it was Mason, was that who came in? Was it Steve?
yeah, Steve Mason.
Yeah, so the items that he brought in that day, was it related to the sign or was it
I
the,
think it was this item.
so I mean, I wonder if are any of those logical to try to explore, or
Well, I think, as I understand it, there's sound architectural plans and, I mean, all of that in terms of how to build it, where to build it, materials used, all of that. What you don't have is the money. I mean, they've even looked at this P3 or public-private partnership, and all that is the delay of the real asking and answering the real question is, where do you get the money to pay them back? Because every source where you're going to get the money, other than the tax, is going to want to be paid back. So the question really becomes and remains, where does the money come from?
well, I
And
mean,
that's going to be a tax increase somewhere.
like to that point, I don't even know what that number looks like. I mean, I'm not saying we do have the money, but how do we even know? We don't even know what the number is. You
For
know,
the construction costs?
well, for like the public-private partnership, I mean, if the number is $5 million a year, they're gonna pay back. I can't imagine it's that low, but if that's the number, I mean, at least it gives us a target point to try to look at how do we come up with $5 million a year to pay that thing back. But if we're looking at 90 million a year, then obviously that's not, but
It's in between those two numbers.
Chantel was on the committee that looked at some of that. And so, I mean, and there were others in here, I think, that were on that committee. I think that's easy enough to get at least what those proposals were from the financial institutions that gave us some kind of proposal a few months ago, that we could get that to everybody to look at. But
yeah,
I'll make a comment. So I think it's the way that this agenda item is worded. It's not really, in my opinion, as of right now, in the purview of this committee in order to make the decision in regards to how we're going to build Jill and what the plan is, because the commissioners still have to come together and vote and decide what that looks like moving forward. I believe that the intention, and I'd have to go back and look at that meeting in order to see, who spoke to it and if Steve was present there talking about the plan. But I believe the intention of the budget board at that time was for us to be able to look at opportunities in order for the county to cut back in some areas, to save some money, to possibly figure out a way in order to put funds into that jail fund in order to be able to earmark funds in order to be able to pay for expenses that are jail related, detention center related. And so I don't believe it's until we have a plan, the commissioners have a plan, then we may look to the budget board in order to look at, specific areas. But right now there is not an established plan. That help?
Yeah, and
Okay.
again, I'm fine with that. I just didn't want to keep kicking this item down
Yeah,
the road.
and I
We're
agree.
supposed to be doing something.
And-
I'm
If
sure.
I
my
remember
bosses-
correctly, when Steve was here, he was going through all the different options
Mhm.
for coming up with the money for the jail. And he had run scenarios on every one. And he said the only feasible option was through a sales tax. I think he was just wanting more of a recommendation in that area to the budget board.
I just didn't want to be at a point where the commissioners are trying to make a decision about, well, we're still waiting on that recommended body BET. And we've been kicking the thing down the road for 4 months.
I'm glad you brought it up. I think the intention was just to be mindful of the way we can cut back or save expenses, be able to put funds towards that account for when we do make the decision of what that looks like going forward.
But
But it's a little premature.
I also think it's important to keep the budget board a part of that process. I mean, nobody's on an island here, and the budget board ultimately is going to have to figure out what to do with the budget. And that's how the funds will flow through from whatever source to pay for the jail. And so any miscalculations in that or whatever ultimately falls to the budget board to try to sort out. So, and I think whatever proposal the commissioners come up with, they're going to, I think, want the robust support of the budget board. And so I think part of that was from the non-commissioner members of the budget board, at least as I understood it, was to try to make sure we're all tracking together. Because what was happening is there were presentations being made by employees of the BOCC around town, but none had been made here. We started asking for a presentation, the same presentation that's being made around town to be made here, and then the presentation stopped. And I think that caused concern, at least for my elected official, and I think maybe it's, like artwork in the eye of the beholder what the agenda item is. But I think my boss would like to be able to track along with what's happening so she can be enthusiastically supportive of whatever the commissioners come up with. Have a good grasp of what the budget board will be asked to do to support that. Because it will be a supporting role by the budget board, not the principal role, but a supporting.
Once we make that decision, we'll definitely have a presentation. Oh, very good point.
I think Jason talked about presentations. There have been multiple presentations that have been P&G or infrastructure or the Board of County Commissioners, and they're all a matter of public record and certain individuals going about town and talking. At the end of the day, the story is all the same. You all, if you were tasked by the budget board, and I'm unclear what they asked you to do, need to figure out a way that we can build and operate a facility, okay? And from where I look at this, being here 19 years, from the beginning of when DOJ came through now, the options are pretty limited. A sales tax increase, or getting a sales tax, because we don't have one. So a sales tax, an ad valorem ask, or to whoever asked the question about what a P3 might look like. I think that number of debts to do yearly debt service is somewhere between $20 and $30 million. So where you all would probably come in there is, where do we find $20 to $30 million a year to service debt? So with regard to presentations, I mean, those have been made. There's public records all over the place. It should come as no surprise that the three options are: you slash your budget by a third in order to fund PPP, you go out and you ask for another ad valorem increase, or we go out and we get a sales tax, if possible. And at the end of the day, we don't have any control what the commission, the voters do, but those are the three options. So talking about squirreling away, in my opinion, 500,000 here or $1 million here, you're never gonna get there.
And I'm in 100% complete agreement with what he just said. Which then leads me to the question that I brought up before. One thing I do have some experience with is ballot measures and the electric. And just because our real only option, it appears right now, is to establish a sales tax sufficient to cover the cost here, just because you need it doesn't mean the voters are going to approve it. What do you do to earn the trust and the confidence of the voters to support something like that? Is the plan I'm talking about. It's not, you can have a plan that, yeah, you need a sales tax, so you got to ask for that. But the question is, how do you go about asking for it? What kinds of governance or structural changes do you have to make in order to get the voters where you get enough
That's a
votes?
different question than the one that is here on this agenda item. So if you want to have that question about how do we come up with a campaign, an educational campaign on the need for this, that's a different question than this.
Well, I was using the first definition of plan, but I mean, what is the plan? And if it's just we ask for it, then that's not really a plan, that's a pipe dream. But anyway, I mean, point taken.
I don't know if our group can take action without knowing what that plan would be, whatever was adopted or changed. At that point, we would be asked to see if there's
I think it might be
funding.
I think it might be beneficial at the next budget board. All the budget board members, sans the District 1 leader, sits on budget board. So those conversations, whether it's the commissioners or the other elected officials, can have a conversation and decide what they want us looking at and what they don't want us looking at. Clear up any confusion as it relates to this type of a situation. I think that would probably be helpful and beneficial. That way, that way we know what budget board as a whole is wanting from this group.
Because we're looking at investment valuations for 2025. I see nothing on the horizon that would just an additional $30 million to suffice the debt service assigned to that. That has never occurred and will never occur under the current provisions of the state statutes.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, do I move that we ask the budget board for clarification on this item?
That's your motion? Okay. You got a motion to request some clarification from budget board as to what they more specifically want DET looking at as it relates to the planned building and jail. Is there a second to that motion? Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 6, discuss study partner with the Criminal Justice Authority and make possible recommendations to budget board regarding CJA's efforts to implement and assume full operational responsibility for providing medical service to detainees. Is this something that we still need to be looking at and studying? I know it's been a little while since that was kind of something that was put on immediately after that change.
Assuming, I haven't verified, but they did put out the RFPs we heard about to seek a vendor to provide the services. I don't know. Last I talked to one of the trust members, they said that it was going to be happening any day. That was right around the last PET meeting. But I'm assuming that's happened, and we're waiting to see what.
Miles, do you know anything about that?
Probably.
Is there anything that you know that you would be willing to share?
Yeah, that's a direct question.
What would you be willing to share? This is why you needed to make sure. Jason asked specifically about RFPs and whether RFPs have gone out.
Yeah.
Are you aware when those RFPs are expected back? What the timeline is on that?
Not off the top of my head. I don't know that one.
Chantel, are you looped in on?
No. We can't use her for it, so.
Money well spent, Chantel?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that they still don't have a blanket medical malpractice. I know they were gonna do it on an individual provider basis for,
Yeah, so each individual provider has their own medical malpractice. It's a losing proposition for us to have that insurance. It's a waste of money. Is that the best way to put it, right?
I'm looking for somebody to authorize me to speak.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a waste of time and money. The reason, of course, is that you can't afford a policy that actually does it. And you can't afford a policy that won't have a self-insured change that's so large that it would make itself moot on a facility level. Now, whether the individual should have coverage or not, that's a different issue. It's mostly a feel-good issue. It takes a target on their back. I believe in full employment for all lawyers, so I'm perfectly happy for those insurance carriers to hire one of them. And I'd much rather have, 12 lawyers showing up for the defense in a court case than just me and Carrie, because it makes it look like we're wealthy, and it makes it look like we can afford a big.
For the record, we are not well.
And, well, I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, perception is reality on some of this stuff. And the fact of the matter is, what will happen is the individual carrier will assume a defense, and then they'll just follow on our lead. I mean, we'll still be spending the money. They'll just follow behind us because that's the cheapest and easiest thing for them to do. And it's the only thing they can do.
Rick, on those lines, if it's not beneficial to have a general blanket policy for the jail, why even have one for the individual provider? I mean,
Well, there is none. That's what I'm trying to say. But some people want to feel good. And so they think they need that because they saw it somewhere in, a hospital television show, or they saw it back when they were in private practice. But those things do not apply here because the Government Tort Claims Act, the deliberate indifference standard on the federal level, and the fact of the matter is nobody's going to buy a big enough policy to matter.
so are you saying specific? So is it specifically because we're running our own in-house? Like, for example, I guess, so when we have like turnkey or armor or HSA or CA, whichever, CHM or whoever it was we used to have, do you think it was better for them to have their own policy? Do you think that assuaged the county of any financial liability for them to have one? Or is it specifically because we're running our own in-house?
Well, those entities were fairly significant size private corporations that had the flexibility to do whatever they wanted to do. And so, yes, it made sense for them to have a policy that covered their company and their employees. And they did not have the issues that we have with regard to cost. They could just whatever they wanted to spend, and then they could include it in the contract they charge back to us. But yes, it was always nice for them to exist out there and have their own coverage. There were cases where the county was dismissed entirely, and the medical provider was left in as a defendant, and we didn't have to do anything except monitor the case from a distance. Those are very few, but it did happen a couple of times. That doesn't necessarily mean, however, that the economics of that bode one way or another. Here's the reason. Let's say that that it makes a $100,000 difference in your litigation costs. Tell me what difference that makes. Let's say it makes a $2 to $3 million difference in liability on a particular fiscal year that's going on the tax rolls anyway. What difference does it make? It doesn't make any. And all it does then is create another level of bureaucracy. You wouldn't believe the reporting requirements for insurance coverage. You solve that by itself, you wouldn't do it. And I'll tell you something else. You guys have already made these decisions. I mean, you don't have auto policies for the sheriff's office.
Yes.
Why not? Because it's not cost effective. Through the Government Tort Claims Act and the tax roll, you got nothing exposed. Unless one of your people goes rogue, and then they're outside of course and scope, and then you still don't have anything exposed. So, I mean, that's the kind of decision making you've already made. Made it your highway departments. You've made it all over the county, historically. And it was cost effective because you weren't paying premiums. But the only premium that you typically pay that really does you any good is workers' comp.
So,
And maybe you're building casualty policies, but your buildings don't burn down very often, so that we don't know whether that's really economic or not. But casualty policies, unless you get them big enough, do not do you any good. And what do I mean by big enough? Glad you asked. $10 million first level, $1 million self-insured retainer, $100 million excess level, divided up however the carriers want to do it. That's what a coverage stack would look like for something like the Oklahoma County Jail.
I'm,
And there are many, many regional brokers who'd be glad to speak with you. You fly down to Houston and see one. I give you a name and number. And 7-figure premiums, they're more than that.
I think on this particular item, if we want to continue having a discussion about this, I think we need to have a discussion with Rod about potentially getting this as an executive session item and not an open item. I think that's something that we might want to consider if we're going to continue having discussions about this. I don't know at this point we're far enough removed from that decision being made. I think from a budgetary standpoint, when we have a conversation with them, we can have that. But some of the other stuff that may affect legal strategy and potential, outcomes of cases that may or may not go on to the judgment rolls. I think those are things that we got to keep in mind. All of us around here, we have a fiduciary duty to the county to protect the taxpayers. And I think that some of those conversations, if we need to have them, maybe have an executive session if it would qualify. So.
It would qualify as long as you're related to a claim
Right.
or a case. And we have many claims.
Right. Yep. So that was my thought. If we want to have a conversation about this and the potential ramifications and all of that, then it would probably be in the county's best interest to have this on a future agenda as an executive session.
Any other specific questions Rod can answer?
I hope not. Not today. Okay, anything else on item 6?
Is that an item we even need to keep on the agenda at all? I'm lost why it's even there.
Yeah, I think that my personal opinion is that item 6 would go away, and if any member of this group wants to have a discussion about this as it relates to a specific case, to request an agenda item on a future agenda as an executive session item, and I would highly recommend that individual get with Rod to make sure that executive session language is drafted appropriately so that we can have the discussion that that office is specifically wanting to have. Because we got to be sure that our citations and everything are buttoned up pretty good on the executive session language itself. So. But that's just my thought. I mean, if that is the will of the group, then we could have a motion to strike the item.
Motion to strike.
The motion is second to strike item 6. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 7, discussion possible action regarding recommendations related to outstanding and ongoing expenses for Allied Universal Monitoring, state contract vendor for GPS hardware services. Recommendations may include, but are not limited to, funding sources, contracts, MOUs, and administration.
The 2-page paper. Document.
Without objection, the chair will ask the clerk's office to make this document part of the record.
Our office added this item. Attorney Fahana had reached out to us because there were still outstanding invoices for the GPS monitoring in the amount of a grand total of $21,699.96. I have a breakdown here. And Miranda had reached out as well because she had concerns as to how we were going to pay those. And
Yeah.
so
Document, can I see what you actually received? We have an issue with these.
oh yes,
We need to,
strike that.
What's wrong?
you see what the issue is. Okay.
Yeah, I totally see it. I hadn't looked at that second page yet.
I didn't.
The chair will actually request that the clerk's office not make this document part of the record. Not the second page, but the first page that is titled AR Aging Detail be made part of the record without objection. If you would please return your page 2 to the clerk's office to be appreciated. Problem is, I have the photograph in my brain.
And this,
So since you just have, since you have a question.
this is related to the pretrial release services.
Yes, this is the pretrial release services for the DA's office. The detail on what you received earlier doesn't have explanations, but I can provide those because I have an email from Kathy, who's also present here with us. This is August through December. Are those first, the 3,000 through the, looks like $2,979. The last line where it says 8,700, this is different than what you provide me, but $8,577.16 is lost and damaged. Can you explain what that is?
Those are monitors that have been, people's gone to get the monitors and not been returned, but are make it final.
And then I had sent an email because I had some questions as well because Randy is unable to attend today in regards to if this is under contract. What was the contract amount for this year for FY25? And then what is the anticipated contract amount for FY26? Because new to me and I didn't know if we had discussed this whenever we were looking at those contracts.
We did discuss it a little bit, and Joe, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this in the past. If anything has changed, let me know. But we brought this up kind of early on when we were having these discussions. the District 1 position and what we thought was going to be the case was this particular contract is a contract that's being utilized by the district attorney's office. Our thought was that that contract was going to be with the district attorney's office. Now, if we need to fund something through the MOU, we could look at adding funds to the MOU with the district attorney's office that currently has the salary and I believe maybe some benefits associated with it. But kind of like when we had the conversations with Aaron in the past about other entities that were using our GPS monitoring, like back in the day, it was always said that we needed an MOU with those organizations that were going to be utilizing that. I think that the best, cleanest operation here, since, I mean, you just mentioned the cutoff, fees and stuff. In the past, we had entities, and I'm not saying that that'll be the case here, but we had in-house, our court services department would get cutoffs and stuff on those ankle monitors, but they were jumping through hoops to get them, and the amount that they had out versus what other entities had out, we had way more out, but we didn't have near as many expenses related to non-recoverables because our folks were, actively, diligently trying to get them. I think any of what the District 1 position is, any of these contracts that in pieces that are related to contractual services should be part of the MOUs with those entities. And then if we need to have a funding discussion, we can have a funding discussion associated with it.
Yeah.
Is that still the position?
Yeah, and I think this came about because when the transition occurred in June, July, the individuals that were put over court services were told to cancel all the POs, which I understand why, right? There's a contract. To Cody's point about our position, I know that we've even, as a means of trying to address this, suggested an addendum to the current MOU for an employee that's performing these services, and I believe that was rejected. So, now you know our position, my position.
Rejected by whom, Jeff?
By him.
I believe it was by the district attorney's office.
Oh.
I've never seen an MOU.
Pardon?
I've not seen an MOU that has covered the expenses. Is that what you're saying?
Well, with all due respect, there was an email chain, I believe, where it was suggested that we take this situation and we roll it to amend the current MOU that we have.
With us.
Yes, ma'am. And I believe that suggestion was rejected, so there wouldn't have been anything drafted.
Okay, do you mind shooting that to me again? Because I haven't seen that. I don't know where that went. All I know, we have an agreement here that the county signed with Allied Universal Electronic Monitoring Services. I assumed it was signed to pay for the GPS devices. Because as you noted, the MOU only covered the employee. All I know is that there's $21,000 owed, and someone needs to pay it. Someone needs to pay it, otherwise we've got people who are very high-risk defendants that are gonna have their GPS services cut off.
This was one of those that since we did this split, we've got GPS fees here and GPS fees there, when before we just had GPS fees in one place. This is part of the why it's more expensive now than it was before, and why we need to have some long looks and conversations about how this is going to look moving forward.
Because in-house, it was, 40-some thousand that we were receiving annually from those that.
That varied from year to year, just on that one fund. Some years it might be 20, some years it might be 80,000.
I think this year it was like 4,000.
Yeah.
Last time that came out.
It's a pretty substantial chunk of money that is not
Right.
coming in on the revenue side.
If we were gonna amend the MOU at some point. Is there any other expenses outside of salary, benefits, and then the GPS contract that we should be aware of? I think that was another question I asked.
Well, it's one of the issues that, and I don't know which committee needs to decide this. Previously, the county had an indigent fund of about $50,000. So for individuals that a court decided was a high-risk defendant that need to be on GPS monitoring by the VA's office, and then we're getting orders weekly where people are put on GPS monitoring by the VA's office. There was an indigent fund before, which we could draw on, which court services could draw on to pay for the monitoring, pay for the equipment and the monitoring of that individual. I don't know what happened to the indigent fund, but if we're interested in doing that again for indigent defendants, there would be that 50,000, I guess that's what's worked in the past. That would be something that the committee would have to.
And
Well,
in regards,
those dollars were part of the overall cost of the program that we were looking at before.
and in regards to indigent services, is that something statutory that we can still provide? I guess that was a question that I had. Since we
I
no
don't
longer
think it
have,
falls under, you're talking about the.
in regards
statutes
to our
that we're
statutes
reviewing?
of,
I don't think it falls under that, but just kind of have to look at that.
Okay.
and sort
I believe I
Since counties are no longer the caretakers of the
have
indigent.
the indigent, that's what I was thinking from.
But
Never
this is
mind, I
a
have
pretrial
problems.
services issue.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there are best practices with regard to pretrial services. It's one of the reasons team doesn't have an indigent fund, because best practices tells us that you don't charge for pretrial release. It's a due process issue. And so, court services and or pretrial release programs should pay if the judge wants them on GPS monitoring. Those programs should be paid for by the entity that places them on pretrial release, in this case, AP the county.
So before, it was folks that were deemed indigent, we had a fund that we were putting money in there
How was
to
that
take
funded?
care of that. It was funded from the county using general fund dollars. And we would just put money in there as needed. The problem now, well, there's a problem or not, the change now is that before you had indigent and then those that were not considered indigent, and those that were not considered indigent were paying in, and then we were using on average, $50,000 a year to fund the indigent piece. Well, now everybody is being treated, my understanding is everybody is being treated in practice as indigent. So not only is that $50,000, the district attorney was talking about, on their side, we also have that on the team side too, that they're treating everybody as indigent. And so now there's no extra dollars, which is, to your point, the money that was coming in before for those that were not deemed indigent. So that's what's also put a strain on the financial viability of the change in structure that we've made on this particular.
So the grant would come to us once a year and say, this fund's been a little bit low, I need some additional funding, and that we would try to transfer money.
Yeah, what we were trying to do was that September supplement, trying to make sure that the fund had 50,000 at the beginning of the year. And then there were some years, we went the first 4 or 5 years that we had established that we used like $4,000 or something in the first 4 or 5 years. And then it grew and it grew a lot, and then it got to where
I think due to some of those individuals that joined the union were having some more responsibility for it.
So this contract, does it go through June 30th? Is
It
it a
looked
full,
like the contract, if
With
this is a
Ally.
signed contract with Ally, it is contingent on the master agreement, and I don't have a copy of
it's
the
a state
master agreement.
contract.
oh, it's a
Yes,
state
it's
contract?
a state contract,
Okay.
so it's,
I assume it would be for the fiscal year, but I don't know.
I believe that's what it is.
so what is, the current MOU covers, what is it
Just salary and benefits.
for what, for just monitoring the folks that are on the GPS program, right?
Well, for those high-risk defendants
Right.
that the court doesn't want monitored by just team. I mean, quite honestly, I think I've said this before, these are individuals that may or may not have some connection with an investigation, and so we monitor them differently than somebody that's just been on pretrial release. And so that's why. And the judges know Kathy. Oklahoma City Police Department knows Kathy. That was one of the reasons it was important to have her stay in that position where she's monitoring these high-risk defendants, and that's why the agreement was to move her over to the DA's office.
And I believe it's on a flat rate, isn't it? Is it billed monthly flat, or is it? It's not flat, so it's different. Not allied, her salary and benefits.
Oh, the salary.
And benefits.
Yes.
So is there any discrepancy in that in regards to benefits paid?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I didn't know if there was gonna be any additional.
Was that funded on the benefit side, contemplating the district attorney's office needing to pay for benefits?
Yes.
And then my understanding was that Kathy kept retiring, kept county benefits, right? So those dollars, whatever those are, should be available because they wouldn't need to be expended for benefits on the other side.
I was just trying to think of where maybe some dollars lie.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask Russ
Right.
what the difference is without her taking benefits, but.
Because I believe it was a lot more than what, not a lot more, but there was a difference in regards to what we paid versus what the state was. It was a little higher.
But, I mean, if
So I guess my question in regards to the contract, sorry, to interrupt you, is what, for an idea for this committee, what is the total cost for the rest of the year that we would need to pay for this contract?
Okay, so
And then what would need to be budgeted for next year if we continue to have them renew the MOU and operate?
Well, I think those kinds of discussions probably need to be had at policy and governance. The Board of County Commissioners you guys are the ones that have the contract. So you need to kind of figure out what you want there, and then maybe so that we don't get in the situation we got in this time, if it's going to cost money, then come back here and say, hey, we've got this idea and we're wanting to do this. It's going to cost an extra, $300,000 a year. And then we can try to find the funding. But I think I think we get the cart in front of the horse if we're trying to come up with funding for a solution that BOCC may not be interested in doing. BOCC doesn't want to do the contract, and we're kind of spinning our wheels trying to come up with that. But then BOCC gets the cart in front of the horse if they approve a contract without having funding available to encumber on it, because then you don't have a valid contract. So I think if it starts there with the discussion and you guys say, hey, if we can get the funding, then we should do this, then it would come to BET so we can answer that. Well, we can make a recommendation and budget board ultimately answer the if. So then budget board can say, yeah, we like this. And if BOCC will approve $300,000 additional dollars towards this program, contingent upon BOCC approving the contract.
And then budget. And then
Is there some type of deadline that's attached to this that says they'll stop monitoring GPS and when the bill needs to get paid?
The due date on one of them was September 30th.
we're already about 5 months behind.
yeah, August was the last.
Well, excuse me, Jason, real quick. Ms. Behanna, I heard you say that the possibility exists that these monitors would be cut off. Is that correct?
Well, if they're 5 months behind and they have to be paid, I imagine the company would say, I'm not interested in providing the services. At some point, I don't know what point they'll reach that. I mean, there's already $21,699.96 owed to them through December. And that doesn't include the rest of the fiscal year. So I'm just anticipating, I don't know, they haven't said that they're gonna terminate their services, but I would assume
Okay.
at some point they're gonna do it.
Is this discussed prior to today?
I was
I mean,
gonna ask
since
that.
August
I was
or?
gonna ask that. Is this, so from the original thing that we had with court services in-house, is this part of is this anywhere in part of the four? So it's not, doesn't sound like it's in the DA's contract, but assuming it's not in the jail's contract, probably not in Team's contract. There's another contract with MIS, right? This is not. included in there,
42,400.
But that's not this.
No.
Okay. So this is
Yeah,
a
this
fifth
is
contract
Tuesday. So I guess
or MOU.
going back to the very beginning, whenever we were separating services, we had, some employees going to the detention center, one employee going to the DA, and then the rest of the employees going to team. Whenever we put together the MOU with the district attorney, I guess it was not discussed that there would be additional expenses that we needed to include in that contract. And that's where we had just discussed benefits and salaries. We hadn't discussed any support services that needed to be included in that contract, or else we would have.
I think the contract provided for like computer and software,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
And so,
Not for this GPS.
yeah, so it wasn't discussed, and that's where it got lost. And then now they have been utilizing those services, and since the beginning, it looks like, and now I'm just surprised it wasn't brought up before.
This 21,000, is that sell you to current date? I'm guessing there's an anticipated amount to end fiscal year with.
That is all of the charges billed up to this point and all of the lost or damaged equipment. That's the final bill is 21,600.
Well, through December. I was
Yeah.
$39,399.96 is kind of an estimate, what I think would be needed through the end of the fiscal year. I just took an average of the charges each month and just divided that, or multiply that times 6 to come to the 39 total. I mean, there'd be additional, 17,700 through the end of the fiscal year for a total of 39,399.96
That's what
for the entire.
that's what the current load is placed on it. There's more individuals in it or less.
So, Miranda, I know you've been hooked up on a lot of this stuff. I think I'm sensing some frustration every time we turn around. We think that, we knew in the beginning, we thought we were going to save money, and then we thought, well, we're not going to save as much, and then we found out we're not saving, it's going to cost more, and then we found out it was going to cost a little bit more, and then it grew to where we thought it was, and now we've turned over another stone, and there's even more. Is there anything else out there that?
Not that I'm aware of. This has been the one that's kind of ongoing that we haven't really been able to resolve, but aside from that, not that I'm aware of.
Let me ask a question. This was a contract. Who entered into this contract?
The BOCC and the district attorney.
Well, no.
No.
Oh, that contract? Oh,
Allied and the county.
I don't know that there was actually a entering into a contract this year, because it's a state contract, and I think they're just utilizing that vendor for those services, is my understanding from what I've heard. Is that correct?
Correct, yes, sir. So around July 1, we had to go ahead and issue an encumbrance for this because we were still operating as court services around when court services dissolved, we unencumbered so that we could pay the MOUs that were put in place.
Well, I mean, this is just one rock. Parts of rocks we're taking over court services. County government's a lot bigger than that. What else is happening that we do not track? We have no earthly clue that we're spending money on it. And we go make structural changes to programs like this without having even remotely explored what the costs are. And then you just keep going, surprise, here's something else on something that was supposed to save money. This is kind of what I was alluding to on a previous agenda item, that it just comes from one group, it's their thing, but then it lands here for us to find money to pay for these things. This was an expense. This was not, maybe it was hidden. Maybe they didn't want anybody to know about it, and so the people that made the plan to do the structural changes could not have known about it. But what worries me is that I'm betting that this is not a one-off. I'm betting we don't really know what our costs are on anything when I see this, because we studied this program to figure out how to privatize part of it, and then it blows up into 3 contracts instead of the 1. We gave team the full amount of budgeted money without realizing you have people leaving, you're at the payout, you've got contracts we're just now finding out about 5 or 6 months after they were due to be paid.
Jason, I do think we go through a very robust review of budgets annually and asking questions, understanding where everybody is. I think, from my conversations with Grant in the past, when we had it in-house and Grant was running it, I had a good handle and idea of what these expenses were. On a regular basis, he was in our office, keeping us up to date on, how many people he was tracking, what his budget was, everything. I mean, it was sometimes Joe and I would have to kick him out of the office because he was, we had that information. But then when we switched it, and we switched it so fast that we didn't sit down and say, okay, let's make sure that we have every single thing lined up that was in there. Because when we had this split and things went in opposite directions, you think, okay, the GPS stuff, we have that figured out, and it's $42,400, and MIS is going to pay for it because that they had a GPS fee expenses that were over there, and we've got that covered here under this. But since it had to split out in multiple ways, we had all these moving parts that we just missed because we were running so fast that we didn't slow down and get all of our ducks in a row before. It was a classic ready, fire, aim situation. I don't think, personally, I don't think that is indicative of the rest of the budgeting process here and everything else that we do, because a bunch of us, we may not ask as many questions now as we have in the past, but a lot of us have been in these conversations on these budgets for so long that we'll just ask, maybe a few questions on each one because we've vetted it so much in the past that we know those answers, if that makes sense. But on this, there was just so many things that were different than the way it was ran in the past, and we just didn't take the time to make sure that we got everything ironed out before we got going, unfortunately.
Can I just say this? It was a fast process, but this information the county has been paying for a long time. This isn't a new expense. This is something the county has been
That's
paying
my
for
point.
Kathy to do
That's the point.
for years.
I know.
And Kathy would have gone over to team or with the county employees, the jail detention center employees, maybe is a better phrase. But her GPS software doesn't work in the jail. And so we were scrambling at the last minute. This wasn't a new item that was added. We knew Kathy handled high-risk defendants. We expected her to go with team when that became a problem. Look, let's just talk openly. If she's got somebody who's cooperating, that person can't go with the team where there might be co-defendants that are on pretrial release. It's not a safe environment. So the best solution would have had Kathy go over to the jail to do the monitoring. It doesn't work with her software there. So as a last resort, I said, we'll take her. We'll put her in the investigation. She can do her GPS monitoring. But none of this was a new expense. The county was already paying her salary, already paying her benefits, and paying this company, Allied, for GPS monitoring.
But now we're paying that same company multiple times because it's not all under one umbrella like it used to be. That's the problem. And when we were thinking, okay, we're paying this amount for GPS monitoring over here on team, we went so fast, we didn't think, we're also going to have, because we've always just had the one line item for GPS. So we have a line item, we have the money in there for the line items. Not thinking now we've got multiple line items for the same thing for the program that used to all be in one. What I'm saying is if we would have slowed down, we would have said, okay, now we have GPS, we're gonna have two line items or three line items for GPS, and we need to make sure that we have dollar amounts associated with each of those line items. We have both of those line items in the MOUs that they should be associated with, and we've got the actual language associated with them in the correct spots.
I hear
We
what
just
you're saying.
didn't, we went too fast and didn't catch up.
I don't know that the county anticipated the growth of the pretrial release program and how the courts, in particular the diversion courts, are using GPS monitoring for those individuals. So I think it was maybe a perfect storm. It's not one person's fault. It's that this pretrial release. program
Nobody
has
here is saying that
grown.
it was one person's fault. It was,
I understand, but I don't want it, I don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face. We've got some individuals here that need GPS monitoring. The judges are putting a lot more people that violate and is a sanction in a diversion program, or people that are on pretrial release that failed to appear once. They might get a GPS monitor. So it's being used more. Maybe that wasn't anticipated in the expenditures as well. All I can say, and look, I'm happy to talk about this and we can fix it fiscal year. I just need this budget item paid. I just need it paid. I don't have the budget for the DA's office. I don't. I would if I could.
well, you may have some from the benefits.
10 or 12,000,
Well, I
or whatever
heard
the
we've been
difference.
paying for benefits for an employee for 6 months that aren't being utilized.
Right.
Or that could be a source of the funds, and then we can figure this out. But this situation goes back to the $325,000 you all were asked to find previously, right? The DA's exactly right. We were paying for this, but we knew what the budget was. We had money coming in. Christie mentioned this previously. We had money coming in from those people that could afford to be on GPS monitoring, but for a decision or a recommendation that we follow best practices. Now, team, everybody, as Cody mentioned, is indigent. That's driving the cost up. So it is a situation that needs to be addressed. I think there's some money there to get part way, but it came about because of circumstances that when team court services went away, it blew up and it got exponentially bigger.
I don't,
So,
some of these things I can understand. Well, no, I can't. I mean, none of these things are acts of God, force majeure. I mean, these were all, to the DA's point, were all known expenses. Then you can anticipate since the county wanted in the MOU with team best practices, that was not something we were paying for before. So there's an associated cost with getting to that point. What's the cost benefit of getting to that? I mean, is it worth the extra money to do those things, or you just do part of them but not all of them? But then you also know you're going to be best practices is not just more expensive in the sense of what you're spending, because now you've got everybody going on to supervised early pre-release, where that was not the case before. But now you're not bringing in the revenue for the GPS monitoring. These are all known factors that weren't known.
well, I remember.
I mean, that's
remember
what I find
the
hard to believe.
detention center down.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that we would have slowed down. And the DA is right. That information was out there and available. It's just, we were going, I think it went so fast, we didn't slow down and say, wait a second, why?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we weren't in those meetings because that was the purview of somebody else. I don't know why it was in such a hurry. There may have been, tiger after us. I have no idea. But all I know is that we're now, again, being asked to find extra money because we just, somebody changed the sheets and look what we found. I don't understand that.
Would we be facing the same situation somewhat through the utilization decrease? And maybe not to the effort that we were having much back into the program, but with the increase in utilization, would we still have had enough money That's compared with previous years. So
What are you asking now?
there's utilization of the ankle monitors has increased. Would we have had the same increase or seen the same instance?
That's
And we were also charging,
Well, if they were paying for it.
yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying, if they were paying for it. Without that, it's not a self-sufficient program like it somewhat was.
And that's something somebody's gonna have to decide. I found out from Kathy that we are charged from Allied 320 cents per unit. Yeah, like $3.20 per unit, activated per day, okay? Court services were charging defendants $6 per day for passive units and $12 a day for active units, okay? That's an issue somebody needs to discuss, whether or not we're gonna upcharge. That's how we had money, and we have been collecting money.
And when I
But there's
looked
more
at-
fees associated. I'm not gonna sit here and say whether it should be $6 or $12, but you have more fees associated with something. If somebody's on an ankle monitor program, it's not just the cost that you're paying the vendor for the ankle monitor, it's also the cost of the staff to supervise that individual as
I'm
well.
just talking about the cost of the unit.
Yeah, but
$3.20 is what we were being charged. We're charging defendants $6 for passive units and $12 for active units.
but what I'm saying though is when Grant, when
The question is, somebody's gonna have to address this, right? Whether or not we're gonna have an indigent fund that's gonna cover the unit, or whether we're gonna upcharge.
well, it kind of goes back to our when you're developing a cost of something, it's not just the cost of, in this instance, what we pay the vendor for the ankle monitor itself. If we have staff associated, you got to associate the costs of the staff with that as well. So it's not necessarily an upcharge; it's the cost of the deal.
I have a question.
Analysis was done, I understand your point.
So-
If you go back and look at some of the old court services advisory board, you're gonna find some of the discussion related to the cost that was mentioned.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember discussing it. So for the people that are currently using the GPS monitoring service, are they paying for it, or how are we
I
currently?
have 33 active clients right now. 11 of those are on an indigent status ordered by the judge. The rest of them are billed monthly, they're told monthly how much they owe, and the majority of them do pay. I do have some that are not paying. It's reported to the judges on how much their fees are that they owe and haven't been paid.
Where do those funds go whenever they're paid?
Where you.
They're deposited into Miranda's.
MOU is run.
So
So
my,
we have to determine whether or not.
yeah,
we're
my
gonna provide
understanding is
indigent
Kathy's
services.
kind of doing it the way she was doing it in the past. It's on the team side that
That they're not
isn't
collecting.
doing it the way Kathy's doing it, or doing it the way court services was doing it in the past.
Yeah, and they refuse to.
Part of the difference is that the clients that team is getting out is they are getting out for free. The clients that I have are either sent to me by the judge with specific instructions or a bond reduction with the condition of GPS, and they post their own bond. So they're not, most of them are not getting out for free. That's why we are able to charge them when we do that.
So the money that we're currently billing, how much that we're receiving from the cost of utilizing the GPS services, how much is in that account, do you know?
It's gonna depend, I know when I checked last, we had received around $10,000 or so, Kathy, from, I believe that was last month though, so any receipt she's collected wouldn't.
So year to
they're not
date,
there yet,
we're at 10,000
roughly.
roughly.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
don't wanna speak.
so if we look at that, and then we look at I'm sorry, forgive me, what, Russ? Who does the
Yeah.
the benefits, Russ?
Right.
He could look at the difference, in regards to, you retaining the county benefits versus what we're paying for the benefits for the state. And you could get that back to us, so that way we know the amount. Then we can go back and on this next policy and governance meeting, determine what is our shortfall in regards to the budget in order to pay for this. I guess you'd have to call a special if this is an urgent matter before the next budget board meeting, so that way it can be discussed in budget board in regards to funding it, or would it go to I'm trying to understand the process. Would it go to BOCC in order to amend? Well, we probably need to amend the MOU. So that way it includes the service moving forward. I just need to know what we need to do moving forward. So that way we can
Well, it
get it
sounds
paid.
like practice with DOCC to do it and come to us and go, we need this extra money that we didn't know about.
Okay, so I think what needs to happen is we need to figure out how much money we have in the account that Kathy is billing for, what's the difference in the MOU and the benefits, and then revise the MOU to include the GPS services for the rest of this year. The cost of it, correct?
And also contemplate the benefits that aren't going to have to be paid for the rest of the year, not just for half.
Yeah. So what is that total amount? So that way, in policy and governance, we understand what is our shortfall, and then we can revise the MOU and put it across BOCC and then put it on for BET.
Yeah, what do we do about getting that?
No,
And
Well,
I mean, can I have authority to use the money that I have different benefits to at least pay some of it?
I don't recall how specific it was, which was why I was asking earlier. I don't remember. So is the MOU specifically, does it say that the board is specifically paying for the salary and benefits and computer equipment for an employee to provide GPS monitoring for a certain group? So is that all that that Kathy does in your office, is just the GPS monitoring of these people?
Of the high risk, what I define it as high risk. Court order, when the court says, I want you to be monitored by Kathy, it comes to our office. But it's
And
very
that's all,
specific
and
group
that's all she does for your office?
Otherwise, they're being monitored by team.
by team.
Okay.
If they're on GPS.
Right.
Yes.
The money that you said has been brought in that I guess defendants has paid for the income monitoring, has that money just sat there? Okay.
Yep, it goes back in, we're running Kathy's MOU out of that account.
You said,
Historically, it's just come into.
did you say it was a service fee or a special revenue? Service fee?
It's a special revenue account, the 1260 account.
So the special revenue is likely restricted?
Yes, I believe there are restrictions. I believe there are.
We're paying for everybody.
I think we established a rollover account just for that purpose.
Okay.
Yes.
For the,
I don't think it's a restricted special revenue. It's a rollover account that we created specifically for the purpose of putting GPS monitoring fees into.
Okay.
for indigent? Yeah.
For pay,
Yeah.
for expenses related.
Okay, so I just want, I mean, is there, if you have some of that money, is it possible to use that if that's what it's for? If it was restricted specifically for that, you see where I was headed?
Yeah, I would think we could certainly do that. I just sent you permission or guidance on where we're paying for it from. Yeah.
Who's funding from the indigent fund? Is that what
You said about 10,000.
So in looking at this,
That's what they're charging for the GPS monitoring.
I've been waiting on a good
It's
moment
not
to bring this up. So, we've recently gone through an end of year call out, and discovered that some of the previous fiscal year's purchase order closures on special revenue accounts had not, the money had not made its way back into that fund. Chantel's here to speak further on that for her team if anybody has questions, but when I tell you these numbers, I didn't want anybody to fall out of their chairs because of that. So it is higher than what we've been discussing, just been waiting on a good time. So for 1260-3010, where Kathy's GPS fees live, we're sitting on a balance right now of $38,000 and some change because of those fiscal year purchase order closures that the team in the county clerk's finance office has caught and ensured to get back into the appropriate bucket for reuse. 1260-3020 is specifically the indigent fund. It has $59,000, 977 sitting there. So we've got more than enough money. It has been where can we pay it from and who's entering it, whose MOU is it going on?
So, okay, so with,
So you've got 90,000 between the two,
It's sitting there, yes, sir.
or no, almost 100,000?
As of today, with the rollovers being completed and everything being shored up. Yes, sir.
Where'd she?
You know,
The other thing we need to discuss is in regards to the indigent fund, since team, everything that they're doing is indigent, and they're not billing for any type of GPS, that cost is going to be more than that. If we're not setting aside, and we don't even know if we can provide services statutorily.
Constitutionally, we can,
Constitutionally.
but
I mean, we just eliminated our whole social services
I know.
department. So we need to determine whether or not we can fund that moving forward. And so, or else the cost will just continue to increase.
well, it sounds like it's court
Or it's
ordered,
not.
so one thing, say it's court ordered.
Yeah.
So no people are indigent status unless it's court ordered from the judge.
What I brought up is we just need to make sure, and when we're talking about extra expenses, if we aren't currently practicing indigent, like in the indigent account, since team, all of their GPS is indigent, and it's not the way that Grant was operating court services, it's different. We just need to make sure that that's not going to be an all of a sudden expense that we weren't anticipating because there's no way to fund it. I guess it's my concern.
Well, I don't see this as a social services expense. I think it's a
So
criminal
it's
justice.
a completely
Yeah.
separate, okay, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't an issue. And if that is the case, we're going to continue to have this problem because we haven't budgeted for that.
Well, you can fix part of the problem, or the VOCC can fix part of the problem. Unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to look at it. When the contract was pushed through with the team, there's a line in there that says they shall follow best practices. Okay, I don't think anybody recognized the budgetary impact that may have. So I think Cody had mentioned it previously, as we're looking to find the balance of the funds, of what we're going to do next year budgetarily with that contract. There is also, I got some contract language changed, but it was just more your standard protections for the county that would require of other typical vendors. These are items that we can certainly take a look at. I asked, and I don't recall specifically Chris's response. I think Cody might have been there. Right, in the jail world, Brandon, help me out. It's one thing to be ACA accredited as a correctional facility, because when you're sued, having that accreditation lends itself to some means of limiting liability. We're an accredited facility. Well, what does it mean to be follow best practices for court services? And I don't think the answer, and Chris will correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the answer there was the same as it is when you're talking about a correctional institution that is accredited or a juvenile institution that is accredited. I don't think that was the same type of response. Is that fair? So as we're looking at all of this issue, there are certainly things that need to be addressed. And my suggestion would be anything related to a contract with the DA's office for the provision of this service and to pay for that employee, that the DA would just front those costs and we would reimburse them on a regular basis. But that,
Yeah.
Let me clarify, is this,
That's normally how we have to do it with our vendors. We have to pay after services are rendered.
I think that's what we're doing, like, with the trust as well, right? For those people.
Is that correct, Hancock?
But as of right now, we have money in that account, is what you just said, in order to cover this expense and then be able to have this discussion moving forward for the contract and for FY26, correct? So that way they can get paid, we can continue to offer services that are important for safety. You just need to know what account to pull it out of.
That's correct. Yes, I need guidance on what we're paying, how
And
much we're paying, if
how-
we're paying the full fiscal year.
Help me understand, there's one fund that has 38,000 and there's one fund that has 59.
That's correct. 1260-3020 is the indigent fund specifically. That's the one that was topped up every year by the budget board for indigent only. And then 1260-3010 was kind of the operating budget. That's where Kathy's MOU is expended out of, and it's got 38,695.
I still do think that we need to look at the difference in regards to the benefits and apply that. And then my recommendation would be use the remainder of one of those funds in order to pay the difference for the year.
Do I need approval from a board to do that?
I think it sounds like there's gonna be money, whether it's from the benefits or from funds that are already in there. I think policy and governance needs to get together and have the discussion about some of this contract-related language. I think if you do make the change to where it's a reimbursement of expenses, that's gonna solve a lot of these problems. Is that right?
She's saying this right now.
Do what?
You do it. I won't sign it.
So.
My understanding is that's the way we have to do it statutorily.
I won't there. We'll have to find some place for Kathy.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, look, I can't pay my lawyers what they need to be paid right now, and I'm not gonna encumber funds. I'll talk to Russ about it. If Russ tells me I'm wrong about it, then I'll come back and I'll apologize and I'll say, okay, we'll do that. But I just don't think that's the way he's gonna wanna operate the accounts.
And I think what would be the fallback that you guys probably need to look at is, I think Kathy, you said that your software didn't work down at the jail. So we need to find out from the jail why the software won't work there. If that is something that can change in case, if the DA's office, if that won't work, if that's not a solution, and we need to move Kathy's position to the trust, then see if the software, if there's something that can be done to get the software to work there, or space here, if there's some space where the software will work. So.
Why don't software work at the jail? What, the Faraday cage or something? I don't understand how software won't work somewhere.
It's the activation of the units and the placement of the units. The agencies that I work with will not bring those people to the jail. It's a safety issue, for one. Some of the people that I do have out on these monitors, they were specifically gotten out of the jail because they had kids out. I mean, you want to speak honestly, that's why they don't even live in the States here.
But they could bring them here, right? And you can meet with them here at the courthouse or the annex?
Yes, but the problem with that, you're talking about moving into the trust. I'm not a county employee.
Trusts aren't county employees either.
I retired from the county and I'm not going back.
Well,
So you're a state employee now?
but
Should stay
That's-
employed.
I mean, I get that, and that's a decision that you have to make personally, but we can't run an organization based upon any employee in a situation like this. I mean, we've got to be looking long-term about what is in the best interest of the program, not today, not tomorrow, but 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road.
Previously, when this, so we've used this Allied Universal Monitoring for quite some time, right? Is that,
Yeah, Grant, do you know how long you've used Ally?
I've been with court services for almost 20 years and I left and I took the first one on.
is it ever, has it always been kind of open-ended? Like, so what I mean by that is, I mean, if it's not contractual, I mean, so right now it's 22,000, but what stops the judges from running that number up to 221,000?
Yeah, that was my
We don't
concern.
know how much it's gonna be because it all depends on how many have been ordered to us, how many of them actually have the money to get out, or if they've been ordered without having.
So at the end of the day, Brandon, it's not so much different than what they've had to deal with over at juvenile in the past. We've got so many beds, and it comes to a point to where you have a maximum capacity, and the judges have to start deciding on who to let out, right? Because you have a maximum capacity, and at some point, it might get that way here, that we have a maximum capacity. I mean, I hope it never gets to that point, but we can only afford what we can afford at the end of the day. I mean, if it's $2 million, but to Jason's point, at a previous meeting, you would think that those expenses, if we have increasing expenses on that side, we should have decreasing expenses on the incarceral.
So that's why the sheriff's got to run the jail. Because with the way it's set up now, you can never do that. So this,
Not
is
put
this,
you on the hook.
well, I mean, it just is what it is. You got so many detainees and defendants, and you fund it. But the way we've set it up, you got to fully fund this whole thing, regardless of what the number is. You got to fully fund this thing, regardless of what the number is. I mean, you don't have to have an MBA to figure that out. I do have a question. Is this just for the ones that the DA is monitoring? This is not
Yeah.
team and everybody else.
Yeah, just as the DA.
That right there is just the bills for people that I've currently been monitoring and the lost and destroyed units for this entire year.
Okay.
That
And
are
then-
not recovered.
And then, well, I think DA or somebody said that you were right now monitoring about 33 people.
I have 7 more that have been ordered to me that are waiting to be postponed or something.
So to monitor the 33 people right now, it's the software program that the county's paying for through MIS, I guess. It's these contracts, your salary and benefits. What was your caseload before? Because that seems like those fixed costs to monitor those 33 would be, in my mind, higher than it was. You probably had a bigger caseload before.
I had bigger cases before. We had at one point in time up to 90. I think 98 was the highest. But it all falls back on, how many people can one person efficiently supervise.
But how many were you supervising before? Did you say 90?
Yes. At my highest point, when court services was dissolved before everything, I got a chance to pass them off. I had 98 that I was watching by myself.
So you're
So
doing
you're
half the
down
work.
a third.
Okay.
You have a third of what you had before.
And honestly, the ones that I had that I passed off to team because I had the higher amount were people that I should have not been watching to start with. They were diversion programs. They were mental health court, drug court, the veterans diversion. Stuff that actually they had their own probation officers and stuff that should have been watching them, but they were working for them.
And that's the point I was making, that we're fully funding the jail, we fully fund her. She was looking at 90 people before, 30 now, the cost goes up. Because we have it all siloed out, instead of consolidating this piece of what the county is responsible for. So the funds flow where the defendants and detainees are, and where the staff can move where they're needed.
So doesn't the cost just transfer over to the detention center? Employees, MOU, in regards to GPS? I mean, aren't we just moving funds from the DA over to the detention center in regards to the cost of
Well,
service?
but if you're doing that, you don't necessarily have to move the full, because if that position would have gone with the others to the detention center, that was to the detention center. Now you've got, instead of, what are we finding, 3 over there, whatever the number is, let's say it's 3, now you have 4, but you're 2 or 3 deep in all of the things that they're doing. And, Kathy could do the 30 that she has now, and she could help with some of the other work on the other, or
Pertaining to this employees for the monitoring. I mean, aren't we still gonna need to pay for the GPS services? I mean,
And in actuality, my costs have actually gone down from where they were because of the fact that the people that were ordered on indigent statuses, most of them went to team now. I mean, the ones that I have now are special circumstances, but I used to have 30 to 40 people.
yeah, but that's not a reduction in your costs. It's actually an increase because you're not providing the services that you were providing before. We're paying somebody else to do that. So we're paying 2 people to do.
I'm talking on my end, not your end.
Well, but we're talking about the whole end. That's the problem.
It's not
Yeah, it's not you. It's that's what I was trying to get across
I understand that.
a second ago. It's the whole situation.
The part is just totally different because the people that I'm watching are not getting services like they are over there. The drug testing that I do, I send it to the lab and they pay for it themselves. Whereas team is having that all paid for in-house. So there's things that are done differently. I don't hold the meetings and do all the stuff that I did previously with them because that's what team is doing and providing the service.
So, I mean, that gets to your point. We've lost efficiencies that we had before.
And we had 4 months last calendar year to try to sort some of this out. And we just took extra money and threw it in the pot and turned the heat up. And now we're saying, well, we're going to figure it out the second half of the fiscal year, first half of the calendar year. And I'm not just brimming with confidence that we're going to do that. I mean, come up with anything that's any better, and we'll be right back here going, oh my God, if we don't do this now, the program is going to run out of money. I mean, it just is what it is. We're siloed. It'll never work right. Which goes back to the plan I was talking about building the jail. It's the operation. The whole thing doesn't make a bit of sense. But by God, we are going to keep doing it because that's the can-do spirit or something. I don't understand.
So we need to figure out how we're gonna fund the GPS monitoring now. That's what we need to figure out. And so, but we're also discussing the MOU and what that looks like moving forward for your position. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that's what I heard Joe mention from a
I'm one person.
BOCC side.
Yeah. Well, and that's also what,
Those thoughts that
Okay, what-
needs to be outvoted.
what, RDA alluded to.
But I
So-
do think that if we kept it the way it is, we still need to make the modifications to where it's a reimbursement for services rendered and not, I mean, we've been told, I don't know how many times that we can't do that. And then we're in the middle of doing it that way.
So I will take this, I will meet with Kathy and Ms. Bahana in order to get a better understanding of the benefits and what monies we have available from that difference. I'll get with Miranda in order to look at those accounts so we know what our total amount we need in order to cover the contract for the remainder of the year. In regards to any additional expenses for, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation that we'll have in policy and governance, but I believe that that's all that we can solve today. So that's what we'll do. We'll add it to policy and governance, have those discussions and come up with a plan and then make a recommendation from there.
In the interim, I think if they got notice of stopping services performed, the district attorney's office should have, I mean, a full year's worth of benefits that we've already paid, that is already part of their MOU that they're not going to need. They could pay down a huge portion of this bill to get it to where, I mean, we're due for what, maybe December,
Plus the 10,000
January.
that you have in there that goes towards that specifically, So we'll figure it out in policy and governance.
Okay,
Just
so-
on that receipts, that has not been determined that we're applying it toward anything.
No, we'll discuss that in policy and governance.
Just wanna
Okay,
make
anything
that-
else on item 7? If not, let's move on to item 8, discussion possible action regarding the transfer of funds from county commissioners to HR Safety Department for supervision and BOCC financial support specialists. We don't have a dollar amount listed in here.
Cassie's got them, I apologize, got it in handout form. I was asked to put this item together, policy and governance, 12:30. It was decided that my position would report to HR health and safety. So what you're receiving now, I apologize if I'm short, is just a handout of what that would look like for my salaries, benefits, and then any other items that were budgeted for travel, parking, and capital outlay.
So if you guys recall, in the past, we had that position that was budgeted in HR, and then it was pulled out of HR, and it was, I think, in the District 2 budget for a while, and then it came out and it was on its own, and we put the budget into the commissioner's budget because that position is the one that actually signs off on the commissioner's budget. But it really, I don't think should be in that budget, those positions. It should just be the commissioner's salaries that are in there. So what this item is contemplating is moving the salary and benefit dollars for this position that's already budgeted in the commissioner's budget and just moving it into the HR budget, since HR is going to be not only the time and attendance signer offer of this position, but will also be the supervisor of this position.
So
If
moved.
that is, I'm sorry, Does that include the grant writer position too?
Well,
We have
the,
we'll have to discuss
yeah,
that in policy and
I'd
governance in
anticipated
regards-
that it would be that position as well, but that's not on here. At a later date, the grant writer position was also funded out of the commissioner's budget. That position is now also reporting to HR. So at another meeting, if this is the direction that everybody wants to go, we'll need to move those funds as well from the commissioners over into HR later.
That'll also be on policy and governance.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second to move 47,875.52 from commissioner's budget into HR health and safety budget.
Cody, I don't believe that grand total captures the parking, office supplies, and items below. That was simply for my salary, wages, FICA, all the things that come out that way. So it's gonna be a higher rate. And then additionally, Paul pointed out that I made a scrivener's error on the office supplies. Original budget 2,000 minus the spent rate, there should be a 1 in front of that 578.54.
Okay, so 478.75 plus 4. So I get a total of $51,049.06.
Yes, sir, that matches my math.
So we got a
So
much,
it's supposed to be $1,578.54.
Yes, sir.
so that 1578.54 plus the 595 for the parking, plus the $1,000 for capital, plus the 47,875.52 gets you to 51,049.06. So is that the motion and second? Is that
For that
dollar amount
amount,
sufficient?
yes.
Okay, so we got a motion and second to transfer $51,049.06.
Motion and second.
Motion.
I second it.
To move those funds from the commissioner's budget to HR health and safety. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Did you get the note? All right. Item 9, discussion of possible action regarding BOCC departmental postage billing and general fund reimbursement.
This is another one of mine. Last October at the policy and governance.
Just real quick, without objection, the chair will ask the clerk to make the document title transfers from 1011-2000 commissioners to 101-26,000 HR health and safety for the record. Go ahead.
At the policy and governance on October 29th of last year, it was decided that my position would begin billing the OCC departments for used postage off of the BOCC postage machine. I've been operating under the understanding that my predecessor was also billing for these items. We've come across in my homework that she has not been billing since 2021, so it was decided at P&G that we would restart that. I sent the last round of invoices, her data pulled off of the machine to each department. And got some pushback on, maybe we weren't budgeted for this. We have some concerns about paying for these items. So that's the item here before you today. Just really needing some guidance on budgeting, concerns over payments, processing, things like
Do you have a
that.
How much is it? There's not enough.
It's broken out by department. If there's interest in sharing those amounts, I certainly can.
Let's just do this. If you could, I don't think this is something that, we're already about 3:30. Just, if you could send an email out send an email to Cassie and she can get it out to all of us so that we don't violate open meetings. She can send it out individually so that we have a breakdown of what each of those budgets are. Let's also take a look and see what type of postage may have been budgeted for the year for those entities and see if any of those dollars have actually been spent or not. Because some of them, they do put money.
Yes, sir, we do. And that's kind of been the feedback is mixed. There are some offices who have indicated that they budgeted for years and just not received a bill. There are some who say, hey, I've never been billed for postage before. What do I do? However, I do want to say I sent an email out the day after that was decided. So all offices have been aware since last October that this was coming down the tubes. I just learned that there were some concerns last week after sending you.
I guess it was our understanding that it all comes out of the general fund and that it wasn't budgeted by department. Is that correct?
Well, it's kind of gone back and forth. You have postage that'll write, and do you have enough in your budget to cover all of it?
We're about halfway through, what had been budgeted by Kelly prior to her departure. It was $8,000 she had encumbered. Looking at the year-to-date, or sorry, an estimated needs, I believe we approved a budget of 8,500. So I have a little wiggle room there, but we have expended around $4,000 of that postage so far.
So it may be a situation to where, even though we wanted to do that immediately, maybe just to make it kind of efficient, we may just need to go ahead and rock along the way we've done it and just have her office go ahead and pay for it, track, so we see where everything is, but it's already budgeted there. Go ahead and finish it out for this fiscal year, but when we do estimate needs, your postage that you asked for the 8,500 would go down, and that money would be allocated across some of those entities for their postage requests
That was
for
gonna be
next
my
year.
motion, just to
Okay.
handle it moving forward the way that it's been done in the past, and then for the new budget season, then to budget those accordingly per budget.
I would say go through though, how far back does the machine go?
I've got some readings from prior to, we just installed a new machine
Right.
in October. So I know for certain I can run reports from the very day that was installed. And then it'll take some effort to get any old readings off of the machine that aren't already saved. And that was the error or issue I kind of ran into.
Try to get that info. That way we can see what those average expenditures are in certain organizations. That way we make sure when we're looking at getting those funds, you know, if I tell you, I need $2,000, that's what my spend is, and you go back and say, no, it's $700 a year on average over the last 5 years.
Well,
So-
and we've got the historical data because we added the PIN numbers to those machines a long time ago. And so,
It would have hinged on my predecessor pulling the data though, because
oh,
we've
before
done away
we
with the
changed
old
the
machine.
machine.
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that was the issue I ran into. So
This-
I'll do what I can.
This
to-
all was brought to our attention in policy governance because we had to change out our postage machine and it needed to be updated, and we
Yeah.
chose to pay a little bit extra so that way we could track and be able to bill, in the future.
So if we're gonna go forward with that and let her just finish out the year, I don't think we need to do anything here, no action needed, because that's a call on VOCC. If you want her to continue handling that for VOCC departments, we don't need to get extra funding to you, you got it. So I don't think we need any action on item 9. Item 10, discussion possible action to add a watch list item of $25,000 to detention MMO. It's for utility and food costs, to make sure that they have plenty of funds to get through the fiscal year in those areas.
Okay, as you remember, last year around June time, we get close to the end of the fiscal year, and had to come in and request money so we could get through the fiscal year. Just so you know, we kind of changed the few things we do just internally to track things, project, forecast, to make sure we don't get in that situation again. Hence the reason why I'm here today in January opposed to June. And just by projecting, we're hoping to just add $25,000 to the wish list. I'm not asking for any money today. That 25,000 could grow. It could go down to 0. We just don't know. Just an example, as you know, utility costs we pay for, food costs we pay for, and there's, with food, it depends on how many meals we got to feed. And it also depends on the movement of what food simply costs. And same with utilities. And I'll just tell you just real quick as an example, 2022 total utilities, 226,000, 263,000, 256,000, and then year-to-date expense this year we're at 141,000. So again, that could go down, it could go up, but just letting you know, we're watching it closely, we're forecasting, we're communicating a lot better. The Bruce, Hodge, Esterbrock, and all those people. Also, in the event there's capital expenses that we don't use and we have money, we're obviously going to transfer and use what we have. So basically just asking to put that on the watch list and keep you updated as we get closer to the end of this year. That's it.
All right. Is there a motion to add the $25,000 to the watch list? Motion, not the wish list.
Did I say wish list? Did I really?
Yeah.
I'm drained.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second to add $25,000 to the watch list for juvenile detention M&O for food and utilities. Motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Janice, can you make sure that Christie gets that?
Thank you, Grant.
Thanks, Grant.
Thank you. See you guys later.
All right, item 11, discussion possible action regarding funding for a countywide asset management solution. Not to exceed 85,000.
Real quick, Tim approached me about getting this on the agenda. This is regarding the Novotics software for asset management. It's something that that D3 is interested in, and I know that other departments within the county are also interested. So I wanted to allow him just a minute to talk about it.
Yeah. Hang on. Siri, set timer for 60 seconds.
50 seconds, counting down.
So just wanted to thank you guys just for everything that you guys have done GIS. This product that we've come to a conclusion on is GIS at its core. Matter of fact, District 3 and District 1 were both present out at the Esri user conference last July to be able to see this product. I do believe the assessor office has seen it in some capacity as well. What this thing will do, it'll help us do workflow management, not as well as asset management. I have the emergency management guys here as well because they are really, really big funds for this. This will help them out in everything that they do, being able to track their brush pumpers, being able to track any type of equipment that they have that is given out to these firefighters or anything along those lines. And we've also talked with a lot of other offices that we really do believe that we can impact and help. Either you guys have workflows that you do on paper currently, we can take those and make those digital. So this is something that can really grow and be manipulated to be able to, the entire county have great use of it.
Is this a one-time cost, annual contract?
This is going to be, so
contract?
this is a one-time cost currently, but it will renew at only a fraction of the cost. So it will renew at, if we were to re-up with them, it just has a one-time cost at the front of about $30,000, I believe. We've got about, I think when we renew it, it's going to be around 45,000, I believe, if I remember correctly. I do know that there's going to be a little bit of uppage since we talked about quotes from them, because they did warn us that they were going into the new year, there was going to be an uppage in rates, but I haven't talked to them since because I wanted to come talk to you all before we got any further down the line of, because we don't have any money for this, so we really need to get it funded if we're wanting to do something.
So this is contemplated to be a countywide asset management solution?
Yes. Anybody that wants to come into it can use it.
And my understanding is we could use pieces of it if, for instance, somebody has an asset management program. They don't necessarily have to use it for the asset piece, but you could use it for other pieces that you.
So, an instance for Cody, he approached us a while back with the Esri just a user meeting that we attend every March. And so he said, I really need to keep track of my contracts. I want something that gives me a reminder whenever I need to look at these contracts for T1.
Well, not just D1, my reminders, but more of there's contracts that fall through because there's so much stuff that we do here, a tracking mechanism that has workflow associated with it so that we know when a contract needs to go across BOCC.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm the one that's in charge of making sure that gets on BOCC, I would have a workflow so I can get it on there, and then it would move on to other people down the line.
Could we add the Allied Universal contract to it?
Fine, bring that up. So here's my question is, how are we tracking assets now? What's the cost of that? What's the cost of the changeover? And are we going to now be running two systems instead of one? And it's going to be cheaper but cost more money.
So currently, I know that I believe D3 uses some of Munis, but what this one does is it enables GIS at its core. To be able to use that, to be able to track their streets and everything. That's why they came to me and wanted to look into this more, because they want to be able to see their streets visually, spatially, with everything. And this also puts a score to their streets to where we might not have to go out and do our what is some type of
pavement management system. I don't think it'll replace that.
But it also does locates for them as well, so we can actually work with the OP folks, and they can actually just be out on the job, and it will ping the people that need to come out and do those locates. It's really cool functionality that is able to be embedded within this.
But that doesn't sound like asset management.
So that it's more. So
It's more than asset management.
So asset management at its core, GIS at its core. We just are able to utilize it more at a reduced cost.
So, cause I was gonna ask, cause the county clerk obviously keeps the records of the assets, so right now, it's done in Munis, right? So,
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think District 3 was looking at a Munis solution when we were out there.
Yes, they
And I was looking at this, a group similar to this. And what we were told on Munis was that it was gonna be really
They
expensive
said that we didn't. Yes.
to change that, and that it wasn't, it didn't appear, I think after District 3 looked at it, I could be wrong, but I think they weren't really,
That's where it ended with
It's
District
gonna be a lot
3.
more
and we went
difficult.
to, because Munis was out at the conference that we went to, and we tried to contact them and trying to fix what's called field sheets, because we had some upgrades that we were wanting to it, and they weren't able to get through to them. They frankly said it was a money issue, and so then we started looking elsewhere at other solutions that could possibly help us, and that's where we are at today.
this has been my only comment about it. I mean, I know Tim had tried to reach out and we tried to set up it, but my schedule's not personal schedule, been whack lately, but, this would be my only comment about it. And the reason I brought up the county clerk being the keeper of those records, back when political witch hunts were abound, we got written up quite a few times by the state auditor for having, our asset management done outside of the county clerk's record system. So somehow those would have to talk and communicate. So
Then they can. We can get a API is what it's called.
Yeah.
So those APIs can talk. It's something we just have to talk about in a little bit more sit down fashion. But I have that authority, at least understanding of it, to at least know that these APIs do exist, where they can at least code this.
yeah,
So I want to know what the statutes say in terms of who's responsible for it, what
Exactly.
kind of implications it has, what the specifications are for the system that the county needs.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to come here and say that we need to absolutely get rid of what we're doing. It's not. I'm just coming here on behalf of District 3, District 1, and also emergency management, saying that they would like to have a piece that they can see their stuff spatially. It really is a very intuitive program that is a competitor of Munis, I will say.
Well, I don't care about that, but I mean, there probably is a better way to do it. I'm all for that. I mean, but just making sure that everybody's talking to everybody. I know one of the things that I know the sheriff's office was interested in at some point, right after I first got here, was like how they equip the deputies and how they equip their cruisers. Every asset, every baton, every holster, instead of saying we're tracking everything that is the uniform and everything that is the cruiser. I don't know how much of that is state law and how yours would handle
It can
something that tedious. Does it have to be that tedious?
So we can make it as tedious as we want to. And so this is a big thing about the product that Paul mentioned is the GIS department is more of the IT group that you guys would have to come in contact with. Whereas if we go with a different group, we have Augie, of course, it helps, but Augie has to go talk to Munis to be able to get stuff done. Whenever this other company comes in, they teach us how to do all the back end work that we need to do. That way we can accurately serve and help you all. So that's one of the things that we can make it as tedious as you guys want to make it.
Because to me, and based on lessons learned just from this brief meeting, to me, I would want to see some kind of proposal. Here's what we have. Here's what we can do. What are the cost differences? What revenue comes in? What expenses are there on an annual basis? How do we account for all of that?
Yes.
What happens to the savings if there's an additional cost, but there's a much better benefit in terms of staff time saved? I mean, I think a proposal that outlines all that would be
including an analysis from the state auditor, make sure that we're following all that.
I mean,
Similar to what you were saying.
I mean, to make sure that it meets statute requirements.
I don't think that was
Well, maybe that's why,
That's why you check.
that's why you check the statute.
Turns out they were sitting in the chairs that they go, no.
I'm just trying to help out District 3. This is.
No, and I understand.
Is that something that you can put together and bring to a future meeting?
We can get something together to where we can bring at least the cost effectiveness at least of this piece. I don't know about Munis though, because that's outside.
I think I can help you with Amber, whoever we need in our office that does that.
Yes.
And to make sure we have everything on the table.
This,
And our office actively looks at alternative schemes. I mean, I think that's a healthy thing. So.
does this system, is it just capital, or does it also do consumables?
It does consumables, it does everything. So it does anything that you can think of whenever it comes to asset management. And it does hourly as well. So say a work crew's out doing their work, you can have it bill for the hours they work on that asset as well, or road, or digging up a culvert.
You can buy the special work codes, you can scan them as you use them.
Something
I mean,
that
it's a total project management
yes.
solution.
Yes, it's just been brought up for asset management for certain things. I see it growing more. I can sit here and name anything that you guys can do with it that at least from my top-down knowledge of your guys' offices, I can see some way that you guys could use this program.
And I know District 1, when we were looking at assets, and I don't know about District 3, but like Munis, we don't put streets in as an asset, but what we would be doing here is listing those streets as assets, the culverts as assets, and be able to track those types of things. So the term asset, I mean, it could mean the physical products,
But it can also.
but it can also mean
Project management.
and contracts and that kind of stuff. So to me, it's more of a tracker of things that will help you run your organization more efficiently. We weren't looking at changing, whatever our process is as far as putting in our, whenever we purchase something, you put the sticker on there and then you have to, we weren't looking at making that kind of change. It was more of tracking the day-to-day type stuff.
Yeah. I'm down to have any conversation you guys want to do. If you want to sit down and talk, the clerk's office wants to sit down and talk, I can even try and see if we can get an audience with the company.
Well, and I would hope we would be able to provide you with the type of information I'm asking. Sure, we can do that. To make sure everything's on the table.
I know the old numbers, but like I said, I know that going into the new year, the numbers change. So I can guarantee you that it was going to be 66,000 for the full year for the entire county for setup and everything involved, and it was going to be 29.5 after that for feeding for the entire county from here. So,
But if we're going to do something, and it's a really good tool that does everything all these different domains need done, then you don't need two systems.
exactly.
You just
So I
need one
definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
So you guys get together, we'll try to figure this out and not rush and make
You
mistakes.
can also have some type of public portal.
It can.
So that if you wish to turn information to the public, it gives us an avenue to present that information in a transparent way to the public, if it so deems.
Yeah, for an additional $10,000, it can do what we deem a public portal. So we can give, for the instance of the assessor, we can give every parcel of land that we have in our system a username and password. They can then log into that portal and see their taxes. They can see if they have liens filed. They can see the deed history that they have filed. Anything along those lines that they would want. So anything that we want to put on that portal, we could then put on it.
And we can do like road closures
Yes.
or construction. We can do snow routes when that stuff's coming up there.
So would that be the
Lots of
public reporting potholes and
You can
things
turn
like
into
that?
that. Yes, it can turn into that as well. We do have that set up through Ed3 currently, where they do. We have what we call the citizen reporter app, and they're able to submit for District 3 currently, and trying to work with District 2 and District 1 on that as well. So
I've kind of looked at it as a way of you getting all of your county resources through your phone.
yes, it come with an
Whether it's a notification that there's a road or bridge project, or someone filed a lien on your property, or you got a delinquent tax bill, or we sent you your assessment notice, or something along those lines. That
If you have a warrant for your
something that comes to you, very similar, like you get, oh, your water bill's due, we're gonna debit your account from the state.
Yeah, it comes with an app, so it's called their Connect piece.
It's a way to,
So.
I think, communicate. Or it may be that you have an outstanding.
Mhm.
You wish to go take,
Uh,
or you've got a
I don't
jury.
know. I don't know if you want to say anything, just.
Well, from the asset tracking piece, it's a huge deal for us. I've got inventory in every fire department in the county. And that inventory has basically tripled with some of our ARPA projects. And for us to do any kind of tracking or whatever, we require that. Plus the auditor's office contacts us at a periodic basis and say, I need to see this widget, and this widget, and this widget. We go to an Excel spreadsheet on where we have finding that, time and manner, and getting it in touch with the point of contact. And it's a tedious.
So this would be something where you put a GPS tracker on there and if
Absolutely. And they can actually send us reports based off a barcode back to us with a photo and that.
And
would
so,
we be using the same contract that they're using?
Try not to.
and so the thing with this is that too, it doesn't add to our so it works seamlessly with our.
So can you provide the GPS tracking for the DA's office?
I mean, it is.
It is GIS,
GIS,
but I'm pretty certain they won't survey quality.
And I'm not GPS tracking.
And we know they're buried there because
If they get me the API.
they're not hiding.
So I think what we can say is that it sounds like there's great interest in this. Let's do just a little bit more digging to make sure that we don't, step in any holes here unintendedly.
This is the general fund.
That's currently, yes.
I would think so.
Motion to adjourn.
I appreciate that. But beforehand, do we have any citizens that wish to participate? Any board comments? District 2? Clerk? District 3? Oh. Treasurer? Board clerk?
Motion to adjourn.
Sure.
Second.
Yeah, we've got a motion to adjourn, and we have a second. All those in favor say aye. There's no new business. Thanks, everyone.